Hello and welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. And today we're trying the Ardbeg Smokiverse for the Ardbeg Day, but somehow they started a bit earlier and now we have to do the video on the fly. We would have had one more week to do that, but it's suddenly the market burst and everything became available. I don't know.
Yeah, probably half year figures for the controllers.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Maybe we're just with pre-order. So if you have a look at the shop, I'm not quite sure how they're gonna do it this year. But I think in some regions in the world it is already sellable. But don't care.
Yeah. So this one is called the Smokiverse, like the universe. They are the Smokiverse, the ultimate Islay single malt Scotch whiskey. So Ardbeg is known for its very, very smoky whiskies. But what a lot of people do not know is that Ardbeg is quite sweet. So if you taste your whiskey and don't rinse your glass in the evening before going to bed, just leave your glass on the table and let evaporate the rest of the alcohol and the water until tomorrow, and very early smell on the glass for this Ardbeg. Then you smell sweetness. Ardbeg is really a sweet whiskey, which is typically, well, overlaid by all this smokiness, and a lot of people do not feel this sweetness.
Yeah. Also, Ardbeg has that touch, or that metholic touch, minty touch, kind of like fresh touch to it, because it has that rectifier in it and takes out the heavier substances. I think, did we have that last year, the one where they turned off the rectifier?
Might be.
Or
yes.
was that the year before? Can't remember. I think
30 years to go.
That was really, the people that really didn't like that one, because it really destroyed the character of Ardbeg. But these kind of special editions, they are always a bit more off the character.
But this one now has this high gravity mash. So high gravity, we're living here on Earth, 9.81 meter per second squared. So we have our 1G gravity here. This is, saying that they use less water and that the mash therefore is denser. But if you calculate grain, typically, or not grain sinks to the bottom, but barley swims, I think. So the gravity might not be higher inside this mash with less
gravity
water.
is always the same. Gravity is a special term that you use for the sugar intensity or the sugar content within a mash, and the gravity usually in the distillery is a production and quality assurance measurement. You are looking to get a certain gravity to have a certain output of alcohol, and you have to have within certain ranges. And now comes the big discussion, if we have variations in gravity, which we do have in just normal processes, it's not always the same. And if you have problems with the gravity, you always look for the malt producer, hey, is that a bad batch or something? And then you analyze what the problem is. So if we have these variations, do they really matter in terms of taste, or do they not?
They say yes. Because if you have this high gravity, you get more out of the barley, and you get more fruity and sugary or ripe barley and a very fruity character. This is what they're saying here.
Depends on what you do. I think gravity, I'm not quite sure, it's around 1,000. They will probably trick it a little bit. They will not just use the best barley to do that, but they will just use less water. That is probably the way you do it.
Here they say, whiskey creators vastly decreased the amount of water in the mash tun, then packed more grain into the mix than ever before, crushing and compressing every drop of liquid. This unconventional mash has magnified the intensity of flavor-active acetate esters, ramping up the density of worts to astronomical levels. We've drawn in fruitier, sweeter flavors from the deepest corners of the mash tun. So this is having more aroma from the barley. Yeah.
Yeah, more barley in there. The thing is, as good as it sounds, and some of you might ask why we're not doing that all the time, because
The
of
matter is
efficiency.
Efficiency. And therefore I have the question, do they still run 3 times through the mash tun? Or do they separate the first and the second and do not take the third one? So the third one maybe they take for regular run.
Yeah, the thing is, usually you take the first sparging, then you have the second sparging and the third sparging. Sometimes there's a fourth sparging, and third and fourth, they're usually recycled. They come into a hot water tank, and they're going to be used in the water for the next first run. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. If I would be the production manager, I would say, get away from this. I would say,
let's do it, but use the mash a third and fourth time to getting out the sugar we hadn't had.
I don't know how long they have to produce for such bottling, if they have to produce a week. It will probably be all in all, there will be
50 to 100,000 bottles, I would suggest.
That is then probably a couple of weeks, or like one week or something. Yeah. They have an output of 2.5 milliliters of alcohol per year. So a week will be 50,000. Yeah, a week less than a week. But I would. What do you do with the low gravity one? Maybe next year we'll get a low gravity one. Then we know what they did with the low gravity rest.
So, but there is no age statement on it. We don't know.
But I think they will just
is.
do the standard procedure. Just they go with I don't know how much they add. I can't remember
a ton more.
They did just say add a ton more or use probably not less water, because then you have the problems with the wash
you
bags.
can't add a ton, because then the mash tun will be overfilled. You have to take less water, otherwise you can't fill.
Yeah, what you reduce in barley, you what you
water, yes,
increase and decrease the same amounts. Otherwise you overfill. But otherwise I wouldn't change anything. Otherwise you are left with low gravity mash and what to do with it.
So now we have to say it's 48.3 ABV, unchill, filtered, uncolored as always, and 108 euros 50 cents at Whisky.com. Probably 1 or 2 or 3 euros more wherever you live, due to different alcohol taxes. Ardbeg. Very typical Ardbeg, very, very smoky. So there is, if you take more barley, less water, then you should have more phenolic, smoky aromas in it as well, because they reside on the barley corn, and therefore you should have more smokiness. Definitely a lot.
Peatiness.
If you smell like peat, you smell really nothing. Nothing. Little sour probably if you put water on it.
It's earthy. If you would say it smells peaty, it would be earthy. Yeah, it's smoky. But I got the peat here.
Yeah. So it's this mintiness, light coolness.
Sorry.
And they say this estery note have some fragrance in it. Probably that's the estery note. Intense. And it's a malt.
And I think it's, as you said, very smoky. I would have expected a lot more fruity and a lot more sweetness.
Too. Yeah.
But as you said, more gravity, more peaty barley in it. So definitely more smoke. This is a really smoky Ardbeg.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that freshness that I get from the Ardbeg. Fruitiness, like an Ardbeg. For me, in the nose, it's not that much more fruitiness.
Yeah. So, cheers.
Cheers.
So, It's not burning on the tongue, but you have the now. But you have a spiciness in the inside of your mouth, and a little bit of smoky cladding on your tongue, and a distant fruitiness. A distant fruitiness coming up, but what? So it's definitely very smoky, very smoky. Yeah,
I would say it's a very smoky, a bit of more of a harsh tone to it. So I do get a bit of that peaty note, like a earthy, tar, like of what is smoke with earth? It's tar. So it really feels like a strong one. And sorry, but a normal Ardbeg is more fruity. There's much more fruity Ardbegs everywhere around. But because of the cask, I'm not quite sure. I would say, did they say anything with the casks? I would say it has low cask influence, maybe second fill, first fill bourbon, mixture of second and first fill would be my guess, with a high intensity of that strong smokiness from Ardbeg with that little bit of a methodic touch of Ardbeg, this anise, or I don't know how to describe it, and a lot of spiciness.
With a second sip, there is a little bit of sweetness, fruitiness coming through, oiliness as well, which I hadn't had before, and to pick up the peatiness. So you get the peat into the whiskey by burning peat, and with this exhaust of the burning peat, you dry the barley, and then you measure the peatiness which is on this raw barley. Then the barley goes to the mill, goes to the mash tun, and then through the distilling, and afterwards you have very much less of peatiness. So the figures are the malt supplied and not the amount afterwards. So I would say they might have the standard 45-50 ppm of Ardbeg, but in the final product there's more peatiness, because from the barley corn you get more into the wash and more into the distilling process. The distilling process, of course, always leaves a lot of peatiness behind, but this one has more.
Yeah, now that I've acclimated, got used to the smoky, tarry touch to it, there is a bit of that fruitiness and a bit of a more light fruitiness for me. Tropical fruitiness, as they say, but very, very, very nuanced,
and friendly oiliness.
Oiliness, friendly is very nice. It's a very nice whiskey. I just don't. The what do you call it? The tasting notes that they suggest on the back. Sorry, if I would have not had the tasting note, I would have not talked about tropical fruit.
I would have talked about
smokiness,
more intense smokiness.
Yeah. So I would say sorry, but just I'm very suggestive person. Like if they say tropical notes, I feel tropical notes. This time I feel very little tropical notes. So I would suggest you will probably not find that many tropical notes in there.
But probably it was an internship writing that, because the real thing on the label is Smokiverse. So
Smokiverse, the word smokiness, it hits more of the flavor than all of the other flavor tastes that they put on the bottle. Tons of flavor. Okay, that works. But sorry, I don't have the tropical fruits and these Easters. But it's a nice, very smoky Ardbeg. I like it that you have a more extreme smoky Ardbeg.
And after the second sip, you do not feel the 48% alcohol or 48.3 alcohol on your tongue any longer. So it's everything balanced through. And it would be interesting to leave the empty glass until tomorrow and then have
what
a
you
smell.
Have then there.
If then the tropical fruitiness is in there, what you typically have in the morning.
Yeah.
Or you have to add water.
Yeah, that could also release a bit more of these esters. Yeah, so anyway, that is the Ardbeg Smokiverse. Have a look at Whisky.com. We do sell that whiskey there. Unfortunately, it is a very limited edition, and these ones tend to be sold out pretty quickly. So have a quick look there. Not quite sure if it's available yet because there's a bit of a scuffle going on with that launch. Maybe you can pre-order it. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.